Wow. Well, hello, Charlie, and welcome to the first episode of IBC Explained.
Thanks, Jack.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I guess we can go through the introductions first.
Yeah. So I'm Jack Zampolin. I'm a Cosmos core developer and Cosmos person, and I've worked extensively on IBC, and I've been seeing a lot of questions about IBC lately.
I'm Charlie. I actually am a lot newer to the Cosmos ecosystem than Jack. I'm coming more from the ETH and Substrate ecosystem, but I've joined Cosmos in March, and I'm really happy to be here. And I joined the Interchain Foundation, and I've been working a lot with the IBC team in the capacity of DevRels and engineering, and more importantly now working on a lot of the kind of product and user interaction with the IBC protocol.
And that's specifically the Hermes relayer and working on these initial IBC user experiences, right?
Yeah, I mean, Informal Systems is handling the relayer infrastructure, but we've been doing a lot of coordination at the foundation between all of these kind of moving pieces of IBC, which, as we will go through later, is itself a big network of moving pieces.
Oh, yeah, totally. So what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so the agenda would be about, as I said before, IBC, kind of just explaining to everyone what the protocol looks like and how, more importantly, the relayer infrastructure works, just to have a kind of high-level understanding of what's going on under the hood. And then we'll cover quickly getting started with interchain transfers. There have been some confusion that we've noticed over, what is a chain ID, or what is a channel, what is a chain ID, and how do I actually find out what those are and put them into my Kepler or Rainbow wallet IBC transfer. The third section will be about what actually happens whenever you're transferring your funds over IBC and you notice a potential delay, or maybe something like your funds aren't actually showing up on the other chain, on Osmosis, let's say. And Jack in particular has done a lot of work on the ground kind of handling those cases. So he'll be able to give you a really clear idea of actually what's going on with your funds and that they are safe, they're not gone. And then we want to give a little update on what's happening with Osmosis and GravityDEX, and then we're open for questions. I mean, this call is meant to be the first in a series of calls that will alternate bi-weekly for the Asian ecosystem a time, and then for the European and American, Canada, South America ecosystems a time that works for them. And ideally, this would be a time that the community can use to answer or to ask any questions, which may be at the top of your head, and we are happy to be here to answer those. So.
Awesome. Yeah, and key point here, funds are Safu, IBC works great. There are some hiccups as we roll it out, and we just want to make sure that we're open with people about that and help answer any questions or concerns.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I can, oops. See. Cool. Is this working for everyone?
Oh yeah, I see you. Some good emojis on there too, which is I think the most important part of any presentation.
Cool. Yeah. So like we said, this is the agenda. Oh, and I forgot to cover that Omniflix is who is helping us run this streaming infrastructure today. So shout outs to them. Cool. Okay. So first, just quickly covering a little bit of what IBC is. So a lot of you might have been interacting with IBC over the past few days, and particularly in the context of the Osmosis DEX. And I mean, obviously, IBC is like a big key term that we hear a lot in the Cosmos ecosystem. We all know it's kind of like the bridge that connects all of the different chains in the Cosmos ecosystem. And I just wanted to kind of like go through a very high level of what that actually means. So in the context of a transaction, you can see here a map of zones, which is this kind of IBC or Cosmos ecosystem visualizer. You can see Cosmos Hub and it's currently being connected right now with IBC to a lot of chains which all have transactions going through them. I mean, there's 9 active zones at the moment. Obviously, in a 24-hour period, you can see there were almost 14,000 IBC transfers. And one of the key, I would say, like thought leaders or the co-founder of Sika, Sunny Agrawal, I'm going to steal a metaphor from him that I thought was quite pertinent for explaining what IBC is. And he described it really well, I think, as a shipping container. So what we're doing with IBC is that we're designing a protocol that allows shipping containers, a standard for shipping containers to be defined. So you can think about it as kind of like the worldwide agreement about what dimensions a shipping container should be. That way, every single company who is trying to ship goods or trying to, like move their goods around, they know that if they put their goods inside one of these shipping containers, that every other transport company will know exactly what to do with that and how to carry it around. And that's really important when we get to talking about how to send information over a blockchain ecosystem or an ecosystem of blockchains, because obviously every chain will be custom and every chain will have its own strong points and weak points. And we just want to make sure that all of them can actually ship their goods to each other. In this case, transactions, funds. And yeah, so I mean, part of this, if IBC is the shipping container, then the other part, which is really important, are the transport and logistic companies. And that's where this relayer infrastructure comes in. So what happens when you send IBC transfer is that your transaction, which is packed into one of these IBC shipping containers, is brought to the port. And this port is maybe located on your chain, or it is located on your chain. You need someone to carry this shipping container over to the next port. And this person is in the IBC ecosystem, what we call relayer. It's a separate piece of technology, which is run by, like I said, Jack is himself a relayer operator. There are several entities in our ecosystem who run relayers, and they are kind of responsible for ferrying over the packets. And so what happens under the hood is that here's, for example, your packet. It's being locked at the port right now. The relayer is going to pass over something to the second port, to the receiving port. What it's passing over is not necessarily your goods per se, because one blockchain understands what it understands, and it might not understand something from the other blockchain. But what it does understand is this receipt, this proof that your goods are indeed actually on port A. It's like the proof of the existence that these goods are actually at the port now, and they're not going to be moved away after you've brought them there. So this proof is ferried over to blockchain B. And now blockchain B knows, okay, cool, the goods are locked up, I have this proof, and now I can actually give you a representation of your assets on blockchain A, and now I can give them to you on blockchain B. And so this kind of passing back and forth of the proofs, of the acknowledgements on either chain is being handled by, again, what we are calling the relayer infrastructure. So what that looks like for the wallet or for Kepler would be cool. Okay, so you have a dropdown. This dropdown indicates
just real quick before we dive into the wallet specific stuff. If you don't mind, maybe another metaphor for folks that are coming over from other blockchain ecosystems that they might be familiar with is atomic swaps. Mm-hmm. IBC works very similar to sort of an atomic swap protocol that's generalized between a large number of chains. Mm-hmm. And one really key part about IBC is it's not just specific to Cosmos. It is a general protocol for doing these types of value transfers and actually generic data transfers between different blockchains. Solana is working on implementing IBC. Polkadot is working on implementing IBC. There's a couple of other ecosystems that are also working on implementing IBC. This is a generic protocol for data transfer between different blockchains. And that is a point that I think a lot of people don't always understand immediately, but is a key part of IBC. So right now, a lot of the stuff we're showing you is super Cosmos specific. That's just because we built out this infrastructure first, but it is getting adopted pretty broadly by a large number of different ecosystems.
Yeah, that's really true. And that's really important to remember, as you know, we have all experienced the really high gas fees on Ethereum. If you've played around with ETH DeFi, you know that, a lot of times it's not even worth it to make a swap on Uniswap because you're just going to pay too much in fees. But you pay a low fee, and by the time your transaction is mined, the slippage is just ridiculous. But I think those kinds of problems are what we're trying to tackling with Cosmos and with IBC. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jack. It was good input. So yeah. So I just wanted to quickly cover these wallet flows because I've noticed that sometimes people are confused about what happens here. So you have your sending chain, destination chain. This is kind of straightforward. This is where I think it's beneficial to kind of understand what we just covered about what IBC actually means, because what a channel means for IBC is that, again, back to this port analogy, you have like a specific trading route between one blockchain and the other blockchain. Every time you create a route, you can create as many routes as you want. But every single route will have its own specific channel ID. And this channel ID will be responsible for a certain type of functionality. In this case, it'll be a token transfer. And what's really important to remember is that if you send your token over a channel ID 91, let's say, and then you send another token over channel ID 92, those tokens will not be interchangeable with each other on the destination chain because of actually this proof mechanism and how IBC does tracing for this, as I mentioned before. So that's really important to remember. So how do you make sure you have the right channel ID? I think one of the easiest ways to do that is to find it on Map of Zones. You can see if you click actually on these dots that represent each one of the chains, you'll see this kind of details tab that pops up. If you click on details, you'll see, for example, okay, I want to send to Osmosis. That means if I'm sending from Cosmos Hub 4 to Osmosis, I should use channel 141. And you can kind of use this method for a lot of the recipient zones, all the ones that are on Map of Zones. Yeah, I think that's probably the most easy way to find that.
One thing that I do want to note real quick about channels that's actually a really cool part of IBC, when people are talking about bridge technologies and other ecosystems, there's this very specific instantiation. One entity normally handles the bridging and sort of moves things back and forth. These IBC channels are persistent. And, the trade route between the hub and Osmosis is a very specific channel. You see it right there, Cosmos Hub channel 141. There's a lot of traffic on that channel, and that channel will be the same channel likely for years to come. These channels are persistent, and they sort of continue with the same names and with the same underlying proofs that are just updated periodically. And that's actually a really cool part of IBC that's kind of unknown to people. So anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, definitely. On the Rainbow, to finish the Kepler token transfer interaction, I mean, we just came from Pure. Okay, so you've basically still filled in the channel ID, channel 91. Now you can select what gas price you want. Yeah, and then you can submit what value you want to send, and that's it. And that's how you do a IBC transfer with Kepler with the correct channel ID.
Awesome.
And yeah, with Rainbow Wallet, I'll do a really quick walkthrough. It's actually a bit more intuitive in the sense that they don't make you fill in your own channel ID. But yeah, here's the interaction flow. You would go through the cross-chain send, sending the atom, target chain, tells you which one. If you want to send to Iris Hub, they give you a selector. And then, yeah, you confirm that. And that's it from my side with the, oh no, I'm sorry, one last slide. one thing I wanted to note is that if you want to see your IBC transaction, you can look for it on MintScan. This is something that, I mean, MintScan, as maybe people know, is only displaying on its front page, on its dashboard, the last transactions. And so it could be a possibility that you won't see your transaction right away because, you know, it's waiting for a relayer to ferry it over, etc. But I just wanted to note that you can see actually the IBC transactions on MintScan. But Jack will go a little bit more now into what you can learn from if your packets are.
Yeah, absolutely. So IBC funds or Safu is a great question. And looking in the user questions here, NE asks probably the most pertinent question and why we are here today, which is please address the current failure rate of approximately 30%. What is the reason for such a high failure rate and what can be done to improve on this in the future? One thing that I do want to note is I think individuals may have experienced higher failure rates. However, the system as a whole, the failure rate's below 5%, which is, really good for the first part of this technology. So I do really want to address this in some detail. So I am going to go into a little bit of detail here. As we were building the protocol, in order to ensure that the funds are safe, the on-chain pieces of the protocol needed to work flawlessly. And that is where most of the development effort for IBC was put in, making sure that the state machines are not going to lose funds and that this is verifiable via a broad variety of testing infrastructure, as well as formally verifiable. IBC is formally verified. You can go check on what that means. But suffice it to say, the on-chain pieces of this protocol work exactly the way they are supposed to. The failure rate for on-chain IBC transfers is actually 0. We haven't had any issues in the wild with that. The only thing that we have had an issue with is having packets relayed in a timely manner, which is a piece of the protocol that, I have worked on for a long time, but without actual usage on IBC, it's hard to incentivize people to work on this problem. So what we're seeing now with the Osmosis launch is the first real production usage of IBC. And what it's exposing is a weakness in the relayer infrastructure that we've built. And that's why we're seeing packet failures in J. So those packet failures, what actually happens is, Charlie, if you could go back to the slide where it sort of describes the relaying, we can sort of dig into this on more detail. You as the user, the only transaction you're sending in this flow diagram here is the first one. You're locking up your funds on whichever chain you're sending the IBC transfer from. And then a relayer needs to go in and pick up that packet and move it over to the other chain. Now, things to point out, relayers are not custodial. They have in no way access to those funds. The only thing that they can do is ferry the proofs over to the other chain. If they don't ferry those proofs over within 1,000 blocks, the packet times out. And what's happening here is that the mechanism for detecting new packets is very much a work in progress, and it's something that we're working hard to improve. So when your packet doesn't get relayed, what's happening is there's a failure in that packet detection by the relayer software. And then your packet just kind of sits there until the relayer comes through and times those packets out. And, I have been relaying quite a bit on some of these more used channels and basically just going in there and timing packets out so that people can retry these transfers. But I think that the most important thing to note, and I've said this a few times on the call, I'm going to say it again, I'll probably say it a couple more times, your funds are safe. They're going to go back to where you sent them from. And it's very easy to try this again. And these failure rates are due to limitations in the relayer software as it exists today that are being incrementally improved. And, those failure rates are already down significantly. We found a few quick fixes. And there's more longer term fixes that we've identified that are going to bring these failure rates down to extremely negligible amounts. And what you're doing right now is interacting with a brand new technology that's being battle tested for the first time. And it's much like using the internet back in the day. You know, you might load a website up and the website doesn't work. You're like, well, why didn't the website work? Is it because my router isn't working? Or normally it's some piece of the supply chain that's not giving you the data in the right way. And that's very much the case here for IBC. So I just want to stress that point and make sure to answer questions here.
I also want to address the question about incentives to run a relayer. So as Zaki said, sorry?
That's a great one.
Yeah, I mean, Zaki said, no, they're not there yet. They haven't been implemented. But today we merged the spec into the IBC protocol that allows for incentivization of relayers. So it is work in progress. And yeah, so I just wanted to say that we are considering that problem and we're working on it right now.
Yeah. And as far as the relayer incentivization piece of it goes, right now, the people who are running relayers are the folks that are very close to these projects. You know, IBC is still this sort of newer technology. We're very quickly onboarding new folks onto this, but you know, there's a limited group of people with knowledge base and hundreds of times that amount of people who are now using the protocol. So we're working very quickly to scale up customer response, figure out ways to explain this stuff better so that you guys who are running into issues where your funds seem to disappear, have the information you need to understand that those things are safe. You'll get those funds back, and we're working really hard behind the scenes to resolve those issues. And that's what I want to just sort of stress here. Somebody asks, how do we run a relayer? There are currently a few different relayer software out there, and I'm just going to grab some links for people while we continue this discussion. Charlie, do you see any more questions there that you could answer for folks?
I see the transferring large. It was said before that transferring large amounts is risky. Would the case still say the same if I transfer 100,000 atoms in one IBC transaction?
No, I've personally done that before. It's not risky. I've had them stall in timeout as well. And you know, I would say that the only thing is that it's scary. Like I have a partner who works with me at Pylon Validator, and we've been doing a lot of work on Osmosis. And through that, obviously, we're dealing with IBC transfers quite a bit. He's called me panicked a few times, worried about where his funds are. And like, I've been talking to him about IBC for like 5 years now. So like, just know that you're not alone. It's natural to feel a little weird about it, and your funds are safe. And like, that's what we're here to stress.
Mm-hmm. And one other question, which was that, oh no, Sisla already answered. Okay, never mind. That's it. I guess we can move on.
Yeah.
I'll give you back your blank slide. If there's anything else you want to.
Okay. Well, I was just, I did just want to talk about the different relayers that are out there, the TypeScript. So there's 3 relayer implementations right now, and each of those is maintained by a separate company, or in one case, not really maintained right now. So we have the initial relayer that I started working on back in, I guess, 2019, 2020, that is written in Go. That was the relayer for Game of Zones and was the relayer at launch for IBC. And, you know, I still use that to relay packets. There's a few other folks. I know the VitWit team also runs the Go relayer. And that one is fairly good. It does a lot of things pretty well. The informal team has been working for a long time on the Hermes relayer that is written in Rust. They've actually ended up having to build out a lot of the core infrastructure to interact with Cosmos chains in Rust in order to build this relayer. So that project has moved a little bit slower than the Go relayer, but moving along very nicely now and is at feature parity with what the Go relayer has. Most of the packets that are being relayed on the IBC network right now are running through Hermes. So it is definitely carrying the sort of workman's load of moving packets on IBC right now. Charlie, do you have a link to install Hermes?
Yeah, I do. I can.
Okay, and we'll drop these links in the show notes probably as well. But Hermes is one. And then the third one is the TypeScript relayer, which is maintained and built by the Confio team, which is building Cosm and Tardigrade. And that is another relayer. I've also used that one. I've successfully relayed packets with it. I think that we're going to see a lot more folks using that TypeScript relayer as especially Cosm becomes more common, because that's the team that's built that. So those are the things. Okay, there's a few questions down here. Relayers are validators, I think, asks CryptoSpace. CryptoSpace, those are actually two separate roles. And the relayer's role is just to move those packets across an IBC right now. There is a lot of crossover between relayer operators and validator operators because the skill sets required are very similar. They both require strong Unix and Linux system administration skills, as well as the ability to keep keys safe while operating with them. So similar skill sets, but different roles within the protocol. Babis Michael says IBC is quite slow sometimes. Totally understand that, Babis. And the reason for that right now is because of the relayer software. What users are running into is initial issues with this relayer software. And it's often stuff like the events that are fired by the Cosmos chain don't get picked up by the relayer. And these automated systems, when they miss something, sometimes it's very hard to notice when that happens. And right now, our best alerting for that is the community telling us that packets are moving slowly. And we see that and we kind of jump in and go fix that. And, you know, that's getting a lot better. And as we're running into these issues, we're not only adding a lot more observability into relayers, you know, the ability to track packets very directly through this entire flow to see exactly where they are. You know, the protocol exposes this data, but it is not easy to do right now. So we have to build tooling for that, as well as, you know, exposing when there's issues with the software. And anyone who's run infrastructure before probably understands that you need good alerting in order to provide good quality of service. And without the data to alert on, that's real hard, and you have to modify the software. And that's kind of the stage we're at with IBC right now. So, you know, it's just important to notice. John Philip Masaga asks, what would be the next improvements for IBC? If you go to the github.com/cosmos/IBC-go, they have a roadmap there. They're working on a number of improvements. Some of them are around relaying, which Charlie mentioned earlier in the call, to help incentivization there. Warren Parks asks, any security concerns if you don't have that many relayers? If you don't have any relayers, IBC essentially doesn't work. So there's a number of ways that we're working to make this situation better. Notice that there are 3 teams that are working on this relayer software. So this is an active area of development within the ecosystem as a whole. Those are 3 of the larger teams within the ecosystem, you know, Vitwit and Region that are working on the Go relayer, the Informal team, and the Confio team. Those are some of the most technically competent, forward-looking teams within the ecosystems, devoting significant resources to developing IBC. So, like, the first thing I would say is there's a lot of effort towards this. So this whole concern of not having enough relayers, not a huge issue. But in the future, I think that users will be able to relay their own transactions. And this is because what you need to do with a relayer is send transactions to 2 blockchains. Kepler allows you to do that pretty easily now. And all that's needed is the technology to create the IBC relay transaction in the browser and then submit it to the other chain. That's the TypeScript relayer that the Confio team has built the foundations to do that. And we'll see in-browser relaying here soon. So, Warren, to answer your question in detail, that's not a huge concern right now. And in the future, it's going to be less of a concern. So I hope that answers your question.
I have 2 things to add on to the question from the next improvements for IBC. I want to clarify, I mean, the roadmap, I think in IBC Go, we don't have an updated roadmap there at the moment, but we will update that very soon. And On the protocol level, there will also be a new feature which is coming up at the end of this quarter or beginning of next quarter, which is called Interchain accounts. And it would basically allow you to create an account on one chain, which is controlled by n number of people. And that account could then control another account on another chain. And so it's useful for a lot of different use cases, for DAOs, for token issuance. I think, yeah, there's been quite a lot of brainstorming and what that could enable. And that's a new feature. And as Jack mentioned, the relayer incentivization and refunding, relaying of redundant packets and overall stability of the IBC protocol. And on the total value that has been transferred over IBC, obviously it goes up every day, but I think one kind of useful feature which Map of Zones is also working on right now is that you will be able to see this value actually in dollar amounts on the visualizer.
That's going to be a huge win. So, you know, a little bit earlier, I was talking about sort of alerting and this data issue that we're running into right now. Like, this is part and parcel of that. Like, we don't even have a good view of exactly how much value has been transferred over it. And that's because the engineering teams put the most effort into ensuring protocol safety above all else. And that's what a lot of the engineering effort has gone into. And that's why I have the confidence to get up in here and say, funds are Safu, even though it might not feel like it. So, you know, that's just a key point is you guys are watching this being built and you're some of the first users of it. And that's really cool because this protocol is very quickly expanding and going to be a reality in this space for a very long time. And you guys are some of the first folks to use it. So instead of getting frustrated when things take maybe a couple hours instead of the 10 seconds that it's supposed to, try to step back and appreciate that what you're doing right now is groundbreaking, cutting edge, and supporting the deployment of these truly global blockchain networks that are actually scalable. So that is a very cool piece of what we're doing. All right. So any other questions from folks while you have us here? IBC goes mainstream, Osmosis and GravityDEX updates. Charlie, do you have any GravityDEX updates?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a quick announcement that the GravityDEX will go live on July 12th. And yeah, that'll be really exciting as well. There's one major difference between the Osmosis DEX and the GravityDEX. I mean, obviously there's several differences, but one thing that might be fun and useful for people here to know is that GravityDEX does batched transactions and enables range positions for people who are familiar with the way that Uniswap does this. So batch transaction basically means that it's as a kind of small whale versus a big whale, you have more advantageous trading. Yeah.
And, you know, one thing that I do just want to kind of talk about a little bit before we go is this IBC user experience, which is the whole purpose of this call is to sort of answer questions around that, talk about the way it is now and like what issues you run into. But I do want to talk a little bit about how user experience is going to improve. So Charlie did a great job of showing you how to do these IBC transfers in 2 different wallets right now. And, you know, that process, as you all notice, I'm sure, is fairly clunky, kind of error prone, really difficult, and requires quite a bit of technical knowledge. Now, Osmosis debuted with a feature where they said deposit and withdraw, and you're depositing coins from one chain onto Osmosis, and then you're withdrawing them back to the original chain. And they hide a lot of the necessity of picking a channel, understanding all of the deep technical pieces, and turn it into this very easy experience. And, you know, the only issue that folks are running into now is these sort of timed out transactions, which is one reason we're talking about that here. And that's going to go away a little bit. But as IBC gets more and more adopted, the more it's going to fade into the background. In the way that we take for granted the way that the internet works, when we type in HTTPS for a website, we know that the cryptography behind that is secure and that we're working with the proper website. You know, IBC is going to be much the same. It's going to fade into the background of these user experiences, and we're going to be interacting with these systems in a way that makes much more sense mentally while hiding a lot of the complexity. And Osmosis is just the first step in that. The Emeritus wallet that the Tendermint team is working on has a ton of features that are going to allow much more complex interactions between a large number of chains in 1 or 2 clicks. You know, one of the things that I saw in the Emeritus blog post was the ability to, and this is pretty funny for the GravityDEX, withdraw liquidity from Osmosis and put it into a pool over on the GravityDEX. That requires multiple transactions on Osmosis, multiple IBC transfers, and multiple transactions over on the Cosmos hub. And they're going to hide all of that behind 1 click. So just want to let folks know that the way that it works now is not the way that it's always going to work. And the failures that we're seeing now are fixable and getting fixed. And we're making huge strides on making this user experience something that's easy, understandable, and fades into the background, so that IBC is really the rails for this truly global crypto financial system. And that's why we built it. That's why we're continuing to work with it. And that's where it's going. So just want to get that out there. Is there an Android app available for Kepler and GravityDEX? I don't think yet. Cosmos Station might support some stuff on that, but we will see more information about mobile apps coming soon. I do know that the Tendermint team has a passion for mobile apps that they have never really actually exercised. So I would imagine that Emeritus goes mobile at some point. Oh, there is a sneak peek of Kepler on mobile. So Kepler on mobile may be first. CryptoSpace asks, any info about photons? There was a conversation going on in the Cosmos ecosystem Telegram group. Photons are one of those topics that sort of pops up every 6 months. People get excited about it. Maybe things happen, maybe they don't. I have no idea. I haven't seen any photons in the wild yet, so I'm not holding my breath. Andy asks, can you please tell us more about Emeritus? Do you know anything about Emeritus, Charlie?
I know probably as much as you do. A wallet of wallets has a lot of very nice technology. I think in a way the Tendermint team is wanting to keep it as much under wraps as possible so that there's a big reveal. I don't blame them.
Yeah. One really interesting question that goes to some drama in the Osmosis community recently. Jeff Peterson asks, what can be done to ensure security of Osmosis while Cosmos Hub builds shared security in Q4? So this is something that my thinking has kind of changed on quite a bit, especially over the last couple of weeks. The amount of value locked on Osmosis also includes the amount of value locked in these liquidity pools. So the whole idea of being able to attack the system by quickly staking a large amount of assets, taking a controlling stake in government, and then stealing in governance, and then stealing funds out of the liquidity pools requires a large amount of unstaked, unlocked tokens that are really easy to move. And, you know, the stake percentage on Osmosis only tells a part of the story. There's also the amount of Osmo that's staked in these liquidity pools that can't move very quickly. So I just want to, you know, say that the security on Osmosis a little bit different than some of these other proof of stake chains. It's a bit more complex. It's harder to analyze. So I do think that the amount of staking security, also stake rate has gone up quite a bit lately. I don't know if anyone's noticed that, but it has. And then in addition, there's a lot of Osmosis locked in these liquidity pools. So I do think the security on Osmosis is great right now. I don't think we'll see an issue there. Will Ethermint have its own separate token or coin? I see Federico in the chat, so maybe Fedi can answer that in the chat. IBC sounds a lot like coin swapping across chain, but what other potential can IBC bring to Cosmos outside?
I would love to answer that first, Jack.
Get it. Do it.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be done with IBC outside of swapping coins. Although I would also question, you know, swapping coins, it sounds quite trivial, but it enables a lot, right? Like you can say what a coin represents. Maybe for you, a coin represents $1, €1, but it can also represent 1 vote, or it can represent 1, you know, voucher, or it can represent a lot of different things. So, I mean, that's the first point. The second point is that one actually roadmap item I forgot to mention was that we are working on NFTs to be transferred over IBC. The first NFT module, ADR, which would be going into the Cosmos SDK, has just been approved. And as soon as that is merged, we are going to start working on the NFTs over IBC. So you can look out for that also in Q4 of this year. And obviously, NFTs, fungibles, but then as I mentioned before, with interchain accounts, you can send also governance votes to another chain. And I think maybe in general, just to have the bottom line, as IBC is really just this shipping container. It's just a box. It allows you to pack in whatever arbitrary data you want to send from one chain to another. And so that is really, really powerful, I think, for any blockchain developer. You can basically, any kind of transaction that would be valuable and important on one chain can be packed into IBC and made onto another chain.
And, I think that just to follow on, Charlie gave us all of the sort of near-term use cases that we're talking about. One thing that I saw at a hackathon really early in IBC development that kind of blew my mind was what the Band Protocol team had built. Band Protocol is an Oracle network, so they bring in data, authenticate it via whatever methods they use, and then offer that to smart contracts. You can use IBC to send that Oracle data to another chain. So let's say the Cosmos Hub might subscribe to a Band Protocol Oracle, and all of the data for that Oracle comes over IBC. So it is really any data. It's not just tokens. It's not just accounts. It's any kind of data. And that's really what makes IBC so powerful.
Warren Parks asked, do both chains have to agree to use IBC? Or if I spin up my own Cosmos chain, could I interact with any other chain that has IBC enabled? So both chains do have to have IBC enabled. And what that directly means is that you have to have like a version of the consensus algorithm from each chain on the other chain. So they have to be able to understand how the other chain comes to agreement. And then you have to implement the IBC protocol. That can be implemented in any language. At the moment, it's implemented at Go. There's Rest implementation and Solidity out at the moment, or being worked on at the moment as well. But as Jack referenced before, it's a bit like TCP/IP. It's just this protocol and standard that can be implemented in a number of different ways. And so once each chain understands how to speak in that protocol and how the other chain reaches consensus, then you can negotiate if you want to do a token transfer. Both chains obviously need to know what a token transfer means, but that's really it. It's a process of coming to understanding between the two chains.
Yeah. One cool sort of example of this permissionless property before the GravityDEX, well, GravityDEX isn't live yet, but before the GravityDEX testnet that we had recently, I spun up an instance of the GravityDEX chain, moved tokens over from Akash and Cosmos, created a pool and did a swap, and then moved all those assets back over IBC to their original chains. So IBC doesn't care if you're a fridge, it doesn't care if you're a testnet, it doesn't care if you're a toaster. As long as it speaks the same language, you can use IBC.
The crypto space asks, will IBC Cosmos support ERC 721 in September or later on? Yeah, so the NFT module we have at the moment
just real quick, there's a difference between IBC and bridges to proof of work chains, specifically Ethereum. What I'm working on right now is the Gravity bridge. That is what would likely support ERC 721. But I just want to, before you answer, wanted to just sort of get that distinction in there.
Yeah, no, true. It's an important distinction. Like, I guess it means if you're asking whether or not we will support it natively or not. What I was going to say about the NFT module is that it offers a ERC 721 like API. And so for people who are familiar with developing with ERC 721, it will be an easy onboarding to understand how to use that module. But yeah, what Jack says is very much true and relevant.
Let's see here. John Philip Masaga asks, can an IBC token be used for collateral like in Kava? And that also sort of gets into what Bitcoin Obsessions is asking with, Will we see a native lending of Atom on Gravity or a similar platform? Think Poloniex lending for BTC, but Atom. So the answer is absolutely yes. And this is one of the major intended uses of IBC. Right now, Kava is the major lending protocol within Cosmos. I think that there's a couple of other ones under development. But yes, this is a major intended use of IBC. Mario asks, should we expect any additional supporting IBC tooling, i.e. Docker testnet, generic wallets to integrate with other chains? Sorry, Starport is not an option. So Mario, if you create a Cosmos SDK-based chain, you can easily import the IBC module. We have quite a bit of developer tooling that already exists for IBC. And depending on your specific use case, we likely have something that works. The state of that tooling is constantly improving. Developers like Charlie and myself, that's what we work on. We're making our lives easier, and by extension, the lives of all of the other developers we work with. We're developer evangelists. I mean, I have always kind of viewed myself as a developer evangelist. That's my core competency. And you know, that is what Charlie does too. So, you know, that's what we're working on. So hit us up individually if you'd like some help getting started with IBC. Happy to chat with you about that.
I mean, what I can say is regarding the Docker testnet is that in the IBC team, we are working on, right now it's more meant as a testnet for us to test against when we're developing these IBC features. It's not something that is necessarily going to replicate mainnet conditions, more like a single node validator or a single validator node kind of setup. But as soon as we have this, we will plan to open source this so other people can use that as well.
Yeah. Also, Mario, if you're looking for a Docker example of spinning up 2 Cosmos chains and relaying between it, the Go Relayer has kind of always had this as the demo. It just spins up 2 individual chains and talks between them. So yeah, just like there are a number of examples of that. I have a depressingly large amount of code for spinning up Cosmos chains in Docker if you need it. So please hit me up. Syed Mosoor, a great question. How secure is the protocol? Can it be hacked? Do you want to start this one?
Sure. I mean, we just had the IBC protocol audited and went through the series of fixes from the audit. And that was kind of what was the result of this is this IBC v100, which was released just a few days ago. So, I mean, what I can say is that it has been audited. Obviously, I cannot say that, you know, we are doing everything we can to make sure it's secure to the very best of our limits, bring external security firms, etc. Yeah, that being
I think one of the key things is Informal Systems, which is the team that is basically the ICF team in a lot of ways, but based in Toronto. Their specialty is formal verification. And formal verification is a very specific type of testing that tests to ensure that a protocol does exactly what it's supposed to and nothing else. And the Informal Systems team is actually world-renowned experts in this. They build tooling for formal verification and are working hard to introduce more formal verification into blockchains. And one of the first things that they formally verified is the IBC protocol. So can it be hacked, i.e. can you make it do things that it's not supposed to? The answer is not really. You can't really steal funds with it. But are there ways to socially game the system or otherwise use it to deceive users? Yes, there are definitely those pieces. And what platforms like Osmosis and the GravityDEX are doing is building systems that prevent those sort of features from being used and help protect users and make sure that they're doing exactly what they want to do, not something that they don't want to do. So to answer your question, Saeed, the protocol is extremely secure. But as always, there are individual threat vectors. You know, somebody can always steal your wallet passphrase. You know, somebody can call you up and pretend to be Chase support and try to steal your money. Like, there are always threat vectors. Please be safe when using this technology. Please understand what you're working with. But the core technology is fundamentally sound. And, you know, that's a key part of what we're trying to get across today. Juhari asks, can IBC transfers be private and untraceable? This is a really interesting question because as you will notice right now, and as I think everyone does notice, all Cosmos chains are not really private. There's the secret network, which is private, but IBC transfers even over to secret after they enable it will be public. They'll be out in the clear. So can IBC transfers be private and untraceable? One could build a zone where the IBC transfers go into an untraceable account so that they become untraceable. And there is actually some work on that front. There's a project called Penumbra that is working to build private and untraceable IBC transfers. But one nice emergent property of the IBC network is that once there is one network where there is good privacy that is connected to IBC, whether that's Zcash or some other secret network or one of these other efforts to build privacy on top of Cosmos. Christopher Goes, the architect of IBC, is building privacy technology on top of Cosmos right now. So I think they will also have, Amora is the name of that company. They will have a lot more information about that. But once there is one place where you, sorry?
Chris Go's company?
Yeah.
Is Heliax.
Heliax. Oh, they changed the name. Okay. But once there is one place where you can find privacy, you can move your IBC coins over there. And once the coins are over there, then you can use whatever sort of privacy mechanism they have, and then move the funds out via IBC once you have gained whatever kind of obfuscation you're looking for. So Juari, the answer for IBC transfers being private and untraceable is right now, maybe not. In the near future, you can find privacy very easily on the network. And in the more distant future, there will be private and untraceable IBC transfers.
And I mean, I think one thing to point out is like, unlike the Ethereum ecosystem, I think the main value and benefit of Cosmos is that we aren't trying to solve, someone wants very private transactions. Maybe another person wants extremely public transactions because publicity and maybe reputation is an extremely important part of their product. And Cosmos really allows you to accommodate for all of this because you can kind of perform the transactions you need with the advantages of each chain. But with IBC, you can actually perform all of them even within the same application, as we've seen with Osmosis and we will see with Gravity. So
really well said.
It's quite composable in that way.
Yeah. One question that hits close to home for me, which kind of random, Neil Uwe asks, I know this is a marketing stuff, but can somebody make an official Facebook page so we can extend our promotion of how good Cosmos is as a blockchain technology? I, for one, am personally a little surprised that we still don't have a Facebook page, but I think that there's a lot of reasons for this. I don't personally have a Facebook, and I know that a lot of other people who work on Cosmos don't have a Facebook for, ideological reasons. Like, we don't like what Facebook does with data. We choose to opt out of those systems. I think most Cosmonauts who are developers fall under that category. So there's that. Also, Facebook quotes us on the first page of their white paper for Libra, which they've built, which is based on Cosmos. So I think there's a lot of reasons we don't have a presence on Facebook. We probably should. Thank you for the feedback, and I really appreciate it. Awesome. Well, Charly, what's your Twitter handle, by the way?
Oh, it's in the Cosmos tweet about this discussion, but I'll say it again. It's Charlene Fei, CharleenFei. I'm not very active on social media
on Twitter
for the aforementioned reasons that Jack just talked about. So I'm afraid you won't find that much content from my handle, but feel free to follow me if you want empty space.
Go follow her. I'm sure you'll post some random stuff about IBC and Relayers.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of brings us to the end of the hour here. Great questions, and I really enjoyed doing with you this week, Charly. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll do another one of these and answer many of the same questions, hopefully, and help people feel a little bit more comfortable with IBC. So hopefully you guys feel more comfortable with the protocol after hearing us sort of talk through very distinctly what it does, how it works, why it's safe, and where your funds are at each stage of this transaction. We've also talked quite a bit about sort of what improvements we're making to help address some of the issues that people are running into right now, which are frustrating. We're not going to get away from the fact that these initial hiccups are kind of frustrating for users, and we're working really hard to address those. So Hopefully we've helped you guys understand that during this call. Anything that you want to add, Charlie, before we call it?
No, that's it. Just to remind everyone that this is going to be the first in a series. And so if you have any other questions that you think of in the meantime, you can either DM us or also you can pop in for the next one. So.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. And thank you to Sisla and the Omniflix Media team for supporting us here, as well as Daniela for helping us organize and promote this event. Thank you guys very much.